For countless years, people have used silver and gold as their primary currency. And over those years, some of it was lost, stashed, or otherwise taken and hidden from history. These are the stories of America's buried treasures in your neck of the woods.
Today's treasure tale takes us to Apache County, Arizona, for the tale of Phish La Ki, or roughly translated, white money. This tale comes from the book Treasure Tales of the Rockies by Perry Eberhardt. One of the most famous lost treasures in the Southwest is the lost Navajo treasure, known in scientific circles as the Phish La Ki, a corruption of the Spanish and Indian meaning white money. Many stories surround the legend, not the least of which is the belief that the treasure is jinxed, and whoever is fortunate or unfortunate enough to locate it may well be doomed. The location of the gold is on the Navajo Reservation in northeast Arizona, near the Four Corners area where Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona come together with Colorado. Rumors of gold here began with the first history of the area. The Navajos, in legend, would sell nuggets and other golden trinkets to neighboring tribes. The Spanish heard about it. It might have been this rumor which sent Coronado in his wild goose chase towards Quivira. The Spanish, they say, did find placer gold here, and looking around for its source, they found a ledge of sparkling gold and silver. They roasted the metal in a crude furnace, producing matte. It was taken in this stage to New Spain, Mexico. When the Spanish left, the long string of prospectors began. Fortune hunters, high-hoping hobos, and the like that toured the Four Corners area and other places as well in search for the treasure. One of the more unusual aspects of this legend is the fact that so many claim to have found it, but in this case, finding the treasure was not a sign the finders lived happily ever after. In fact, those who found it were lucky to live at all. Two noted searchers and finders of the gold were Merrick and Mitchell. Jack Merrick was a Colorado prospector who decided to buck the Navajo jinx. He obtained a grub stake in Colorado and disappeared into the mountains. Months later, he showed up in Durango with a goodly load of silver ore, which assayed at better than $800 a ton. He said he had found a rude, ancient furnace near the silver and some gold. Before heading back into the mountains, Merrick met a 21-year-old youth named Mitchell, who had recently come west to seek his fortune. Merrick took on an instant liking to the youth and took him on as a partner. The two men set out. This was in 1880. Months passed and Durango received no news of the two men. Finally, word got out through the Indian underground that the two had been ambushed and killed by Indians. A well-armed posse from Rico and Durango set out to locate them. The posse went to Navajo chief Hoskanini, who had escaped Kit Carson's roundup of the Navajos in 1863. Hoskanini said he had heard of the murder of Merrick and Mitchell, but denied that the Navajos had anything to do with it. He said the Utes had ambushed the two men at night. Hoskanini led the posse to two skeletons eaten away by vultures. The posse buried the men near two lonely buttes that now bear their names. Their work done, the posse wasn't above looking around for itself. They questioned, or attempted to question, several Indians. The chief's son, Hoskanini Begay, told them that the mine did exist, but he said only 7 Navajos knew where it was. He didn't say or didn't know who the 7 were. The posse couldn't find any gold or silver, or even any evidence of it. This wasn't even gold and silver country. Minerals of any sort were rare here in this bleak land. Uranium wasn't known then. In 1882, a prospector named Charles T. Johnson formed a party and retraced the route of the posse. In looking around, he became separated from the others. While climbing over some rotten log, he lost his footing and fell down a steep incline. After he had collected his senses, he found he was in an old mine shaft, the ceiling of which had apparently caved in under his weight. He saw a large vein of white quartz and was sure it was rich in gold. His shouts eventually brought the others in his party to the rescue. Johnson got back to civilization and told his strange story. Then, his part of the story ended. Johnson disappeared. It was never known whether he and his companions found the treasure again, or anything about him. Another well-known story comes from Prescott, Arizona, where a priest showed up one day looking for this same gold. His, too, was a strange story. He said he had heard of the gold from a man in a Denver hospital. The dying man said he and 2 others had taken $75,000 in gold from Navajo territory, and that they had fled the scene just ahead of the Indians. They chose the long, difficult route in order to avoid the Redskins. They traveled south through western New Mexico, crossed the Mogollon Mountains, followed to the Verde, and finally reached Prescott. Along the way, 2 of the men contracted malaria and died soon after. The sole survivor suffered wounds in a brief skirmish with the Indians. Fearing for his life, he buried the gold under a boulder near a stream at the foot of the mountain. The stream flowed into a small valley somewhere near Prescott. The old prospector never returned for his gold, and on his deathbed begged the priest to find it and build a hospital. The priest never found it. Harry Golding said the mine does exist, and he ought to know. Golding owned and operated the Golding Trading Post much of his life and lived amongst the Navajos. Although he never spent any time searching for the mine himself, he estimated its location in the extreme northeastern section or southeastern Utah near the Four Corners. Golding said he first learned of the mine from an Indian named Hosteen Yazzie, who visited the trading post often. Convinced that the Indian was accurate in his knowledge, Golding one day offered to finance a prospecting search by Yazzie. At first, Yazzie refused, but sometime later, when Yazzie's family was sick and needed money, he agreed to make the trip. Golding outfitted the Indian for a 3-week trip. Soon after, Yazzie left. However, the weather turned cold and damp. Golding became concerned. His concern mounted as time passed, and still no word from Yazzie. Golding was just about ready to form a party to search for Yazzie when the Indians stumbled into the trading post, cold, hungry, and frightened. He had no supplies. He was soaked, shivering, and half dead. He muttered over and over that the gods of Phish La Ki were angry. He said the gods brought on the bad weather and wanted to destroy him for attempting to disturb the treasure. The story of Phish La Ki was recounted in a Denver newspaper in 1915. It prompted the most publicized search for the lost mine. This one was led by Colorado State Representative James O'Rourke. He rounded up a few experts, purchased the most modern equipment, and all the supplies they would need. The party set out on April 18th, 1915. After several weeks of careful combing of the Four Corners area, the group finally found some gold nuggets. A short time later, they came to a pile of stones, which they believed marked the location of some 200 pounds of silver matte left by the Spanish at least 100 years before. But they did not have time to dig out the treasure. The isolated Indian villages at first had just grumbled at the trespassers. But the longer the palefaces continued, the more the natives became restless. Finally, they banded together to drive the strangers out. Most historians claim the Indians merely intended to throw a scare into O'Rourke and his party, but they did more than that. The party was chased into Box Canyon, where 4 of the party were killed in a rock slide. 2 others barely escaped death, receiving serious wounds. The rest of the party was held captive for 45 days, while the Indians wondered what to do about them. Finally, they were turned loose, but only after they had lost all the taste for treasure. The Indians still don't cater too much to trespassing by palefaces. A few years ago, a Navajo chief even refused to discuss a plan offered by Colorado Governor Steve McNichols to run a road through Four Corners. The road is being built now. One wonders how steam shovels and earth movers will fare with the gods of Phish La Ki. So if you're ever in the Four Corners area of Arizona searching for treasure, remember, it may be guarded by the Indians' gods or the mountain itself. Good luck, happy hunting, keep on digging it. Like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Hit the bell and follow me on my next outing. Good luck, happy hunting, keep on digging it. For even more to explore, check out these other videos.